Hi! On the Woodpecker today, I'm making two different types of dog treat bowls. Run! Oh, bon chien! At our home, we use a lot of dog treats. Yes, because either René's rat or our daughter's rats would never do tricks without them. So we always have a treat bowl nearby. Here you can see it better. It's perfect. As a matter of fact, it was a gift we received during our last European trip. As you can see, it's written Paris, June 2018. Thank you, Michelle, for that great gift. My first bowl will be a segmented bowl. What a great opportunity to use scrap maple and walnut. The first thing to do is to rip a bunch of wood. Then I identify the top, because they're not totally square. Next, I cut 4 dozen pieces. Here they are. In the middle, it's what I want. Now I just have to glue all this. Not too difficult. A bit of glue and a hose clamp. Then I leave this to dry. Then I do this again. And again. In all, I glue 10 circles. I was even forced to use all the hose clamps that were on my own tools to finish this. While the glue dries, I can cut some plywood to cap my future glue up. I stick 2 squares together, mark the center, and trace a circle. Okay, I went a bit overboard with the tracing. After removing the corners, I drill a hole in their center. To be able to hold everything on my light chuck, I need a smaller circle. By using the central hole, I'm able to hold this in place and turn it round. After this, the glue is dry enough to remove the hose clamps. But it's not totally straight. It's time to use the drum sander. Then I can glue all this together. The first thing to do is glue the circle I've turned to one end. Then on top of it come the 10 layers of donuts. When I'm done, I clamp this. But I know I will need a bottom and a top for this box, so I cut more maple corners. After cutting 8, I glue all of them 2 by 2. With a shape like that, I can't figure out an elegant way to clamp this, so I just leave it to dry as is. When it's dry, I cut it straight. Here, I have no trouble at all using clamps. I leave all my glue ups to dry overnight. The next morning, I put my big glue up on the lathe and turn a cylinder. In fact, this part is quite easy. Even someone who has never touched a lathe can do this. And in no time, I have this. Now I just have to sand it smoother. This makes a super nice job if I use an interface pad and my sander on Rotex mode. But I also need to turn the inside round. I don't really need to go very deep because I need to cut my glue up. I begin by making a small divot. Then I use the back saw. This way I have less waste than if I were using a paring tool. But I need to make a nice surface at the ends of my cylinders. Now I need to take care of the top and bottom. I begin with the bottom. First thing to do is to cut a circle. Put it on the lathe and turn a tenon to the size of the cylinder. Now I can glue this in place. Not too difficult. While the glue dries, I can take care of the top. Again, I need a circle. But this one will be a little bit bigger than the other one. Okay, it's just a tad too big. Now that it fits, just like last time, I need to cut a tenon to the size of the cover. Then I turn it around and mostly make the shape I want for the cover. But to be honest with you, I should have just turned it around and made the final shape later. This would have been easier, but it's too late now. When I'm finished, I glue it in place. But before I can go any further, I need to wait for this glue to dry. And then it's time to cut the cover. Put it in the chuck and take care of its slip. But it's only here that I realize that I should have left more meat on the top to grab onto the chuck. But I manage anyway. Turn it around and turn its final shape. After sanding it, the cover is finished. Now I need to take care of the bowl. I begin by making a lip to hold the cover in place. When I'm done, I turn it around. But my jaws are a bit too big. I need to switch them. Now it's time to make the bottom straight. Okay, if you do more turning than I do, you're saying right now, what is he doing? It seems that I have no clue. No! But I was pretty lucky. After all, I was able to find all the broken pieces, and luckily for me, I didn't have too much damage. I glue all the pieces that flew away. Now I need to wait for the glue to dry. Then I can sand the pieces that I've just glued in place. It's almost invisible now. But this time around, I remove the excess wood differently. I also dish out the center of the bottom. And give the final sanding. Here's my first treat bowl. But as usual, I need to sign it. First, the bottom. And also the inside of the cover. This way Chantal will be able to see it each time she will give a treat to one of her dogs. I mean sample. For the finish, I apply a mix of mineral oil and beeswax. But I find this bowl a little bit too common. I want to give a gift that nobody can find for a couple of dollars at the dollar store. If I remove the time I've waited for the glue to dry, I estimate it took me about 1 hour to make. That's why I want to make a second bowl in the shape of a dog biscuit. Here's what the internal layers will look like. The last layer will have 2 dishes, so the bowls will be deeper. But the most impressive part of this bowl is its cover. Just designing this took me way more time than turning the other bowl. It would also be a two-faced carving, so the cover will stay in place. That should be the final product. But I know I will encounter some hurdles along the way. I always do. And here I go. First, I'm making the pockets on the bottom of the lid. It's not too long with a 1/4 inch bit. But since it's a two-faced carving, I need to be able to align both sides. That's the reason why I have to drill those holes. They match the holes from the bottom. With those dowels, I'm sure it's aligned. After screwing the birch to the table, I have to change the bit for a super small round ball nose bit and start the 4.5 hours of carving. As expected, I had serious issues. Here, it's more obvious. Not surprising that I wanted to change my CNC for a more rigid one. I put another piece of birch on the table and make another cut. But this time around, to help me, I make a 1 hour roughing pass beforehand. I figure this would help for the finishing pass that I just make after that. Since the bit will have less stress, I hope this will work better. I was mistaken. Yes, the carving went well, but when it started to cut the outside, my CNC acted up, and I ended up with this. I stopped it in the middle of its rampage. Now I need to make another lid. But like they say, third time's a charm. We'll see. To help even more on the finishing pass, I overcut the roughing pass quite a bit. Speaking of finishing pass, here it is. But this time around, I don't cut the outside at all. I think it's a good decision. Here's the final product. I'm super pleased. Okay, I had to go through failures, but I will use them to test my finish later on. But I'm not done with the lid. Now that I have a lid, I also need a box. For this, I'm going to use these birch planks. But it's not enough. I will also use these walnut strips. But I have a bit of work to do on the walnut. I need to cut all the edges. Then this needs to be glued. First, the birch. It's quite easy. It's also easy for the walnut, but much longer. When it's all glued up, I let the glue dry. Then I can resurface it. Now I can begin to cut the first bone. First thing to do is to cut the pockets on the bottom layer. Then the exterior profile. When it's done, it's time to cut the other 3 layers. They are all identical. 2 interior profiles for the treats and an exterior one. At the end, I have this. I just need to sand it a little bit and cut the tabs. Here's what the box will look like. At this moment, I'm pretty excited. But the internal layers have to be glued together. I leave this to dry overnight. The next morning, I have to remove the interior tabs. I try with the oscillating spindle. I quickly come to the conclusion that this will take all day. So I bring the glue up to the workbench and use a rasp to remove the tabs. On top of being much more quiet, it's way faster. Now I can glue this to the bottom layer. Done. I just need to wait for the glue to dry again. When it is, I have one small problem. All this rasping made the walls thinner, and now the dish out part is smaller than the walls. I try to fix this with carving chisels. After a while, I figure out that this will take the rest of the day. So I get one of my carving burrs and finish the job with it. This goes much faster. Yeah, but unfortunately, the noise is quite annoying. The last thing to do is sand this. But I also need to take care of the outside. Here, I'm pretty sure you're saying, "What? Don't you remember last time?" And you would be right. I go back to the workbench and use my rasp again. But even this rasp is not aggressive enough. I switch rasp. This takes quite a long time. Probably more than the time I spent at the lathe for my other bowl. But I'm still not done. I have quite a few scratches left by the rasp to remove. I take care of that and make the final sanding. But unfortunately, the rasp damaged the top of the bowl. Nothing to worry about. After rounding over the sharp corners I just did, this part is finished. But not the lid. The first thing I do is sand all the smooth round edges. Then I want to add a little bit of color to the lid so I can better see the design. The first thing I do is clean it with alcohol and brush a coat of shellac on it. This will seal the raw wood and prevent the paint from seeping into the wood. When the shellac is dry, I rub it a little bit. Then I put a dab of brown acrylic paint in a container, add some water to it, and wipe this everywhere on the carving that took me 5.5 hours to carve. This is scary, but you might remember the two other rejects. Well, I use them to test this. When there's paint everywhere, I wipe out almost all of it. This way, it only ends up in the crevices. This has the effect to make the carving pop out. But I want the poppies in the basket to be a little bit darker, so I paint them brown. And again, I remove the paint just after applying it. Here's my lid now. This changes its look. But when the paint is dry, I sand all the smooth round edges again and seal the paint with another coat of shellac. When it is dry, I can burn the date under the lid. In fact, I only burned a mistletoe and 2020. But under the box, I go all the way. And now, I can finally wipe on a coat of salad bowl finish. I don't forget the lid. Here they are, the 2 dog treat bowls I made for my daughter last year.
Tiens, ça a l'air qu'il faut avoir des bols de bouffe différents. En plus, il y a 3 enfants dessus. Wow!
As you can see, Chantal was super happy. As a matter of fact, so am I. My only regret is that I didn't cut the bowl in the center of the glue up. This way, the last tier would have been whole. Too late now. Turning this was not too difficult. In fact, this bowl is way less work than the other one. Adding these puppies adds a lot to the lid. I hope you liked it, or maybe learned something. As for us, we'll see each other soon in another episode of the Woodpecker.